Hey, Hayden here, back with the last video for Chapter 1, which will cover sections 5 and 6, looking at interdependent relationships and also science practices and the scientific method. Big idea number 4, the last one talks about interdependent relationships. Before, when we talked about characteristics of living things, this was often listed under the organization of living things, where we kind of go from sort of the smallest to the biggest. We often define these as emergent properties. So you have these different levels of organization, and each level is more complex than the one before it. Okay, so we're starting at atoms and molecules, and eventually the smallest unit of a living thing, the cell. Okay, you can have a cell that is just a living thing, single unicellular things. That is the living thing. But when you look at multicellular things, then you build upon that. So an emergent property says, hey, each of those small parts below it, like atoms and molecules and organelles, those put together give a cell properties and function differently than those things, and often the things can't survive separately. Okay, the cells, the tissues, and all those things within us are working together to make the organism work. Okay, the communities and populations working together to make the ecosystems work. So as you go up, it gets more complex and dependent on the individual properties to contribute or make the properties of the bigger level itself. Okay, so we're going to start small. Okay, we're going to start with the atom, the smallest kind of thing that we know of, other than sort of the subatomic particles, electrons, protons, neutrons, which you get into in chemistry and that kind of thing. But then we start building upon that. So you take different atoms, you put atoms together to make molecules like H2O or methane, which is CH4. Okay, carbon with 4 hydrogens. Now that has different properties than just the oxygen itself, or just the carbon itself, or the hydrogen itself. Those molecules, sometimes they stick macromolecules in here. Macromolecules would be like sugars, the lipids, the 4 macromolecules that make up cells. So proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. And those put together make cells, which is the smallest basic functional unit of a living thing. Cells put together with a common sort of purpose, function, working together would be a tissue. Bio 2, often our chapters were split up by systems and tissue. So we started early on talking about different kinds of tissues like epidermal tissue, epithelial tissue or covering tissue, connective tissue. And then as we went into organs and organ systems, we talked about some of those tissues that are involved in each of them. Okay, so you have different organs, okay, that make up like digestive system, nervous system, different organs of a plant, leaf, stem, root, flower, and we put those together to make systems. Root, shoot, system make up the organism, okay, the individual tree, the individual elephant. All of the individuals living in a certain area in the same space, interbreeding, we call that is a species or population. Okay, a population, all of the same species in a particular area that are breeding and living together. You throw in all of the living things, so the elephants, the trees, the grass, the zebras, the gazelle, the lions, all the living stuff in an area is the community. Okay, it's still living stuff. Community still involves living stuff. You throw in the ecosystem, that's now also the non-living stuff. So the living stuff, the communities, plus the physical non-living environment, amount of water, amount of sunlight, soil, rock, type of earth that's there as well. Okay, the layer of life that kind of goes all the way around this globe that we call our planet Earth, we call the biosphere. Okay, bio, life, sphere, round. So that round sphere of life from the deepest ocean and in the ground to the highest living thing up into the atmosphere. And that's the layer of life that goes all the way around. Okay, so what the emergent properties say is that starting here with the atom, as you move up this scale, okay, you get more and more complex and also interdependent and dependent on all of these things down below here working together and doing their function, doing their job in order to make the big complex thing as a whole. You disrupt one of these lower levels, that's going to disrupt higher up the chain. The next two slides just give definitions of those different levels, starting with the biggest and the most complex at the top. I am not going to take time to go down through all these. You can look these up. You can read about them in your textbook. You can pause the video if you are taking notes and you do want to jot them down. You can pause the video. Second slide, organism all the way down to atom. Okay, in case you need to write these definitions down.